The lonely farmer was trapped on the edge of the ravine, clinging to a branch that could give way at any moment. When all hope seemed lost, the only one who appeared was the most despised woman in the village. What happened next would forever change both their destinies. Watch until the end, because this story will prove that the one rejected today may become the hero tomorrow. The sun was still dragging lazily across the sky, bathing the village in shades of gold and orange, when Eleanor Grace walked slowly toward the river. Her wicker basket, worn with time, swung from her arm while her eyes scanned the path. Even without realizing it, every step she took was shadowed by judging stares and muffled whispers. "Cursed! She'll never have children." The words traveled across the street before anyone dared speak them aloud. Older women with stiffly starched aprons passed by wearing airs of superiority. Children, cruel in their innocence, tossed small stones that bounced across the dusty ground. Some men looked away or quickened their pace, as though mere contact with her might bring misfortune. Eleanor knew that reaction all too well. She was unwelcome everywhere. A young widow, Eleanor carried a silent grief the village could never understand. Her husband, Thomas, had died just over 2 years ago, consumed by a relentless fever no remedy could cure. The illness had taken not only his life, but also the future they had dreamed of together. She remembered the nights they would sit by the fire, holding hands, talking about what lay ahead. They had dreamed of children's laughter echoing in the yard, of mornings filled with little joys, of light footsteps running across the wooden floors of their home. But reality struck cruelly before those dreams could ever be realized. Thomas had been infertile, a truth they discovered only after countless failed attempts to conceive. The sorrow had piled up in silence, a weight Eleanor would carry forever. Yet despite the pain, Eleanor stood firm. She learned to live with solitude, to reinvent herself day by day, to find purpose in the small tasks that filled her routine. The life of the village was closed off to her, but within her heart lived a kindness no one ever acknowledged. She fed stray animals, tended flowers in her yard, and helped those in need, even if she received no thanks. To the neighbors, however, she was nothing but the woman who could not bear children, the cursed widow everyone avoided. As she crossed the wooden bridge that creaked beneath her steps, Eleanor felt the cold wind brush her face. Her daily routine was harsh, picking fruit from nearby orchards, washing clothes in the icy river, fixing whatever was broken at home. Each gesture carried the weight of a life society insisted on belittling, yet it also revealed the silent strength growing within her. While she poured water over the clothes and fruit, a skinny dog emerged from the shadows. Its eyes were wary, but hungry. Eleanor crouched down, holding out a piece of stale bread. "Here, eat," she murmured softly, with a timid smile. The animal hesitated, then moved closer, licking her hand in gratitude. Small victories like that warmed Eleanor's heart more than any kind word could. Each act of care reaffirmed that despite everything, she still had love and protection to give. As she washed the clothes, her thoughts drifted back to Thomas. Her chest tightened as she recalled their late-night conversations, their intertwined hands, their frustrated plans. The fever had taken him too soon, and the infertility they had discovered together had stolen their dream of a family before it even began. The loss still burned like an open wound, yet Eleanor found the strength to go on, because she knew that living, despite it all, was her only choice. "Good morning, Eleanor," a voice called behind her. She turned cautiously. It was Mrs. Whitmore, always with that condescending smile. "Good morning, Ma'am," Eleanor replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I hope your hands aren't too worn out from all that useless work," the woman said, tilting her head before walking away, leaving Eleanor once again with the bitter taste of invisibility. The village seemed determined to remind her of her place, the unwanted woman, the one who could not bear children, the one who had lost everything too soon. Still, Eleanor remained strong. Her heart, though scarred, could still love and care. She reached out to those in need, even if no one noticed. As the sun climbed higher, slowly warming her back, children's giggles rose from the opposite bank. They tossed small stones that skipped across the water, knocking some fruit out of her basket. Eleanor sighed and picked up the ones still intact. "One day you'll learn that cruelty never brings happiness," she murmured, steadying herself again. The birdsong and the murmur of the river filled the silence that followed. As rejected as she was, Eleanor felt in that moment that something was about to change. Deep inside her, a quiet courage was beginning to awaken, promising that, though despised, she would find the strength to face whatever lay ahead. The day carried on, and Eleanor Grace's life remained simple and solitary. Yet among the shadows of the village, a certainty stirred. This woman, invisible to everyone, carried within her something no one could ever take away. A heart that, despite everything, still knew how to love and to dream. On the other side of the village, where the dust of the roads mixed with the scent of damp earth and livestock, lived Nathaniel Hayes, a man known by all yet, paradoxically, always distant. A solitary widowed farmer, he bore not only the weight of years of hard work, but also the responsibility of raising his 6-year-old daughter Amelia, alone after the premature death of his wife. His house was large but plain, surrounded by green pastures and weathered fences, yet the silence that hung over that home was often heavier than any locked door. Nathaniel knew farm work better than anyone. From sunrise to sunset, he dug, planted, milked, mended fences, and tended to the animals. Every task demanded physical and mental strength. Each day carried memories of the wife taken too soon, of smiles and promises that would never be fulfilled. Amelia was his joy, but also his constant reminder of how merciless life could be. She needed affection, yet he often struggled to give her as much as he longed to, the fear of failing always present. That morning, Nathaniel decided to take a horseback ride to clear his mind, bringing Amelia along as he often did when the work allowed. The sky was bright and clear, and the morning breeze made the little girl's hair dance, her laughter echoing across the pasture. Nathaniel smiled, trying to live only in the present, pushing aside for a few minutes the weight of loss and worry. "Hold on tight, Amelia," he said, adjusting his hat against the sun. "I'm fine, Papa," the girl replied, her eyes shining with joy. The horse moved along the narrow trail that wound around the edge of a deep valley. Nathaniel knew the terrain well, but that morning, distracted by his thoughts, he failed to notice how the ground had grown more slippery after the previous night's rain. A sharp crack echoed when the soil gave way beneath the animal's weight. The horse reared in alarm, neighing loudly. Nathaniel tried to steady it but lost his balance. He slipped, heart racing, and slid toward the brink of the cliff. As the ground crumbled beneath his boots, the world spun, and in an instant he found himself dangling, clutching a frail branch that shuddered under his weight. "Help!" he shouted, his voice carrying through the valley, echoing against trees and rocks, mingling with the frantic neighs of the horse. Amelia, still on the animal's back, froze. Her eyes widened, tears streaming down her face. Daddy, don't leave me," she cried, clutching the reins tightly and leaning forward as if to help, but fear paralyzed her. "Help! Someone, please! Daddy, please!" The little girl's desperation was almost tangible, every word echoing across the valley like a plea for life. Nathaniel looked down, the threatening void yawning beneath him, the fragile branch straining against his grip. Each second stretched into an eternity. Vertigo crawled up his spine, and he realized with horror that one wrong move could be fatal. "No, I can't," Nathaniel muttered through clenched teeth, his arms trembling with effort. "I can't leave you, Amelia. Not today. Not like this." The wind cut across his face, sharp and merciless. The roar of the river below mixed with the horse's neighs and Amelia's cries. Every sound seemed to amplify the danger. He struggled to remain calm, but adrenaline was burning through his strength. The branch groaned louder, threatening to snap at any moment. Amelia sobbed even harder, stretching out her little arms. "Daddy, hold on tight, I love you. Somebody help! Don't leave me alone!" Nathaniel's heart clenched at the raw terror in his daughter's voice. Every cry was a brutal reminder of what was at stake. He breathed heavily, trying to calculate each shift of his body, every possible push, knowing that a single mistake could be his last. "Stay calm, sweetheart. Stay calm," he murmured, though his own voice shook. "I'm here. I'll make it." But the reality of the cliff was cruel. He was hanging on by a few fingers, the skin of his hands torn and bloody from the strain, his muscles burning, the ground seeming impossibly far away. Every second was a test, every breath a battle. The sight of Amelia, frightened, vulnerable, heightened the pressure and the fear, but also sharpened his focus. He had to survive for her. Elsewhere in the village, no one could imagine what was happening at that very moment. The farmer's quiet routines concealed a fragility he never showed in public. Now, at the edge of the abyss, Nathaniel Hayes was nothing more than a man, human, vulnerable, dependent on luck, the strength of his arms, and an unexpected miracle. As he clung to the fragile branch, fear and a strange clarity surged through his veins. Every lost second could be fatal. And in that instant, no one knew that somewhere in the village, a miracle was already stirring. Someone despised and ignored by all was about to hear those cries and perhaps save not only Nathaniel, but also the daughter who wept for him. The sun was high in the sky when Eleanor Grace, her hands stained with fruit juice, was picking apples by the riverbank. The scent of the water mingled with the sweetness of the ripe fruit, but the calm of the morning was suddenly shattered by a distant, piercing cry of despair. "Daddy! Daddy! Don't leave me! Help!" The child's voice split the air, echoing through the valley. Eleanor raised her head, her heart tightening in her chest. Something in the desperation of that little voice made her legs move before she even thought, carrying her up the trail toward the source of the sound. With every step, adrenaline surged, fear mounting, yet so did a courage she had never known she possessed. "Oh my God!" she gasped, running through trees and undergrowth. "Someone's in danger!" When she reached the point where the trail narrowed along the cliffside, Eleanor froze for an instant. There, hanging from a fragile branch over the precipice, was Nathaniel Hayes, the farmer everyone considered untouchable. His muscles were taut, his face pale and dripping with sweat, his eyes wide with fear. His daughter Amelia shook atop the horse, sobbing, clutching the reins as if they were her lifeline. "Daddy, please!" the little girl wailed, her arms outstretched, helpless. "Somebody help us!" Eleanor's chest ached. For years the village had despised her, branded her cursed, avoided and ignored her. But now, faced with a life on the verge of being lost, she didn't hesitate. Without thinking, she dropped her basket of fruit, pushed through the brush, and stepped toward the edge of the cliff. "Hold on!" she shouted, extending her hand toward Nathaniel. The man looked up at her, stunned, unable to believe the courage of the woman the village had always treated with scorn. The branch creaked ominously, the wind whipping hard, threatening to tear him loose at any second. Eleanor pressed forward, her feet sliding in the damp earth, gripping roots and rocks to steady herself. "Don't let me fall!" Nathaniel cried, his voice breaking with fear. I can't! I won't let you!" Eleanor answered, determination blazing in her eyes. "Take my hand." With superhuman effort, she stretched out her arm until it met his. The tension in the air was nearly tangible. Every movement had to be exact. One mistake, and both of them could plummet. Nathaniel felt the unexpected strength in her grip as she pulled slowly, with every ounce of her weight, balancing precariously on the unstable ground. "Just a little more," she panted, her breath ragged. "I've got you. just a little more. Nathaniel felt her fingers lock around his, firm and desperate. The branch beneath him was about to give way, every second stretching unbearably long. Fear and gratitude tangled within him, every fiber of his body trembling. With one final surge of strength, Eleanor managed to haul him upward, slipping a few inches in the wet soil before finally dragging them both onto solid ground. Nathaniel collapsed to his knees, gasping, his face pale and drenched with sweat. Amelia bolted to him, throwing her arms around his neck, sobbing uncontrollably, while Eleanor stepped back a few paces, still struggling to catch her breath. "Daddy, are you okay?" Amelia cried, clutching his arm. I thought... Nathaniel held her in his arms, trembling, while his eyes shifted to Eleanor. Something in the intensity of her gaze, in the unexpected courage she had shown, made him realize something he had never imagined. The woman the village had despised possessed a strength he had never known. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice choked with emotion. I don't know how to thank you." Eleanor gave a faint smile, still breathing heavily. Nathaniel looked at her, still catching his breath, his body shaking from the tension of the fall. His blue eyes, normally cold and calculating, were now wide with shock, reflecting something he couldn't quite name. There was more than fear or gratitude there. There was recognition, respect, and a strange connection neither of them had expected to find on the edge of a cliff in that improbable moment. Amelia, still clinging to her father, wiped her tears with the back of her hand, glancing from one to the other. The man everyone considered untouchable was vulnerable, and the village's despised woman had faced him head-on, even if timidly, to save him from a cruel fate. Nathaniel blinked several times, trying to organize his thoughts. The adrenaline still coursed through his veins, but he couldn't look away from her. Finally, his voice came out hoarse and low. Who are you?" Eleanor immediately looked away, blushing. Hands tightly clasped, fingers trembling, she replied almost in a whisper, I'm nobody, sir." Nathaniel raised an eyebrow, his heart racing for reasons beyond fear. "No, it can't be. Of course it's you." He swallowed hard, his breath still uneven. "You just saved my life." Eleanor drew a deep breath, a slight tremor in her voice, still unable to meet his gaze directly. I thought I had to help." Amelia, almost jumping off the horse, ran to Eleanor and hugged her tightly, sobbing, "Thank you for saving my daddy. You're amazing." Eleanor's face flushed even deeper, and she took a timid step back, unsure how to respond. The warmth of the girl's embrace surprised her, making her heart beat faster in a sweet, almost unfamiliar way. Nathaniel finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion, still shaking. I owe my life to you. I don't know how to thank you." Eleanor tilted her head slightly, looking at the ground for a moment before lifting her eyes again, shyly, but with a small smile that brightened her face. I just did what needed to be done. But I'm glad you're okay." Nathaniel took a hesitant step toward her, his eyes shining with admiration and something else he didn't yet understand. Every reserved gesture, every shy glance from her, fascinated him. Amelia still clung to her father, her sobs subsiding, but the tension in the air began to ease, replaced by a quiet sense of relief and something deeper. "You have courage," Nathaniel murmured, almost to himself, but loud enough for Eleanor to hear. "More courage than anyone I've ever cared for." Eleanor looked away again, biting her lip, embarrassed. I'm not usually like this. She paused, taking a deep breath. "But I couldn't let you fall." The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of ripe fruit and damp earth. The valley, which just moments before had been the stage for fear and despair, now witnessed a meeting that would forever change not only the life of this farmer and his daughter, but also Eleanor Grace's own story. Nathaniel's gaze could not leave her. There was something there beyond gratitude, a deep, almost instinctive recognition that this woman, underestimated by all, possessed a quiet, true strength he had never seen before. And Eleanor, in turn, felt something awaken within her, a shy but strong certainty that perhaps for the first time in her life she could be more than the woman everyone despised. The echo of the horse's neigh still rang through the valley, Amelia clinging to her father, exhausted but relieved. Nathaniel breathed heavily, yet his heart beat steadier. He knew, in that instant, that something had changed. The impossible had happened. He was alive thanks to the courage of a woman no one dared to value. And in that moment the world seemed to contract, joining three lives that had until now walked alone, about to cross paths in an irrevocable way. Eleanor hurried away after ensuring Nathaniel was out of danger. Her heart still raced, her hands trembling as if the invisible rope that had pulled him from the abyss had never been released. She did not wait for thanks, did not want to hear anything but the return of normal life. She simply lowered her gaze, murmured a few words, and walked along the narrow path, leaving behind the farmer, his daughter, and the strange connection that had been born between them. But Nathaniel could not forget her. That night, lying in bed, every time he closed his eyes, he relived the sensation of the wind cutting across his face, the weight of his body about to plunge, and above all, her firm hands gripping him with a strength that belied all fragility. Who was that woman who had dared to face death to save him? 2 days passed, and his restlessness only grew. Determined, Nathaniel saddled his horse and rode toward the village. Amelia, clever and curious, followed him, secretly carrying a small wildflower she had picked in the fields of the farm. Arriving at the central square, he dismounted, drawing attention. Men stopped their conversations. Women whispered among themselves. The powerful, usually distant farmer was there, asking firmly, "I'm looking for a woman. Her name is Eleanor." Silence fell for a few seconds until one of the villagers, a grey-bearded man, scoffed. "Eleanor? You mean the widow," he said, dragging the words as if they were shameful. "She lives in that little house at the end of the dirt road." He nodded toward the little house, and the others exchanged curious glances. Nathaniel simply acknowledged them with a nod and continued on. Amelia, not understanding the weight of that silence, held the flower tightly in her small hands. The house was simple, made of wood worn by time. Nathaniel took a deep breath before knocking on the door. From the other side, hesitant footsteps approached. The door creaked open slowly, revealing Eleanor, her eyes wide with surprise and caution. "Mr. Nathaniel," she said, almost in a whisper. He removed his hat in a rare gesture of courtesy and gestured back for Amelia to come forward. The little girl stepped up, shyly smiling, and offered the flower. "Amelia picked it herself," Nathaniel explained. "I thought I should thank you again, not just for saving my life, but for what you did for her too." Amelia immediately hugged Eleanor's legs with the spontaneous affection only a child could have. "Thank you for saving my daddy," she said, her voice choked, as if she could still feel the fear from those moments. Eleanor knelt, unsure how to respond, her eyes moist. She gently touched the girl's hair and glanced at Nathaniel, cheeks flushed. "I didn't do anything anyone else wouldn't have," she replied softly. "No," Nathaniel interrupted firmly. "No one else would have done what you did." The silence that followed was intense. Eleanor lowered her gaze, nervous, unsure how to handle the presence of someone so powerful standing before her. Then Nathaniel took a deep breath and said, "I'd like you to come to the farm. We owe you more than words can express." Eleanor hesitated. The invitation felt too big, too risky, but Amelia's gaze, shining with anticipation, broke down any resistance. That afternoon, when Eleanor accepted Nathaniel's invitation, she walked to the farm with a heart full of apprehension. She had never set foot there before, and everything seemed vast and unfamiliar. The house, though simple, was well kept. Sturdy fences, clean windows, flowers planted in the front garden, and a few animals grazing peacefully nearby. The scent of the earth mingled with the distant lowing of cows and the neighing of a horse. Nathaniel greeted her on the porch with a discreet smile, as if uncertain whether he was doing the right thing. But Amelia waited for no formalities. She ran to Eleanor and grabbed her hand, as if reuniting with a long-lost friend. "Come on, I want to show you everything," the girl exclaimed, already pulling her toward the yard. "Hold on, darling," Nathaniel interrupted, amused. "First, we'll have lunch. I've prepared something simple, but from the heart." Eleanor, accustomed to eating in silence, found the warmth of that table unusual. The meal was modest, stewed meat, potatoes, and freshly baked bread, but to her, it felt like a feast. Amelia chattered non-stop about the animals, school, and the games she invented, filling spaces that would otherwise have been quiet. Eleanor smiled, listening to every word, gradually opening up without realizing it. After the meal, Amelia didn't let go of her. She led her through the vegetable garden, showed her the chickens' nests, pointed out the orchard, and even the flowers beginning to bloom near the corral. Eleanor followed attentively, letting herself be guided, as if each of the girls' laughs were a balm to her tired soul. As the sun began to set, Amelia held her hand and, eyes shining, pleaded, "Please, stay at our house." Eleanor hesitated, but Nathaniel's steady, calm gaze gave her courage. She didn't stay that night, but in the following days she returned, and whenever she arrived, the girl ran to her as if afraid of losing her. Soon, her presence became part of the farm's routine. Eleanor helped gather fruit, cared for Amelia while Nathaniel worked, and at night they would sit around the fireplace where the girl requested stories before bed. Eleanor invented tales, recounted childhood memories, and when she fell silent, Nathaniel remained watching in quiet admiration, as if the unspoken words were reflected in the sparkle of her eyes. Within those walls, time seemed to flow differently. Amelia's laughter filled the rooms, Nathaniel seemed to breathe easier, and Eleanor discovered, almost unconsciously, that she was beginning to feel at home. And so, between golden mornings and quiet nights, something new was born, something none of them had planned, but all seemed to secretly desire. The days passed almost without Eleanor noticing. Before she knew it, a routine had settled into Nathaniel's farm. In the mornings, she would wake early, pick fresh fruit from the orchard behind her small house, and almost instinctively bring it to Amelia. The girl always greeted her with a wide smile, running to hug her before even tasting the sweetness of the berries or the soft perfume of the apples. Nathaniel, more reserved, watched from afar. He was not a man of easy words, but Eleanor noticed how his gaze lingered, how he watched her brush his daughter's hair, kneel to hear her stories, make her laugh until she was breathless. He said nothing, but inside him grew the sense that this woman, rejected by the village, was restoring color to his daughter's life, and perhaps, without admitting it, to his own as well. As the days passed, Eleanor's visits became more than mere kindness. They became a natural part of the routine. In the afternoons, she helped Amelia water the garden, collect fresh eggs from the chicken coop, and accompany the girl on short walks to the river. When Nathaniel returned from heavier chores, he would find the two of them on the porch, sharing stories and laughter. That scene warmed his heart in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. It was Amelia who suggested the picnic. "Daddy, can we all go to the field together? Me, you, and Eleanor. We can bring bread, cheese, fruit. It'll be fun," she said, eyes shining. Nathaniel hesitated for a moment. He was not a man of distractions, nor of sharing moments like this outside the house. But seeing his daughter's excitement and Eleanor's shy smile, he simply nodded in agreement. The following Saturday, the sun shone generously, and the sky was as clear as a freshly washed sheet. They packed a basket with homemade bread, cured cheese, fruit, and a bottle of lemonade. Together, they set off for a flowery field where a gentle breeze carried the fresh scent of grass. Amelia immediately ran off chasing butterflies, laughing loudly, her braids swaying behind her. Nathaniel and Eleanor spread a blanket on the ground and arranged the food. For a few minutes they remained in silence, watching the girl play. The atmosphere was light, but an unspoken thread lingered between them, an invisible line drawing them closer. It was Nathaniel who broke the silence. "When I was in the village, I heard someone mention you. They said you're a widow. Is that true?" Eleanor took a deep breath. Her heart raced. She didn't like talking about it, but she also didn't want to hide it. "Yes, it's been a long time." Her eyes drifted toward the horizon, as if searching the sky for a memory of another time. "Yet it feels like the village has never let me forget. To them, I am always the woman marked by tragedy." Nathaniel tilted his head slightly, listening to every word. There was no judgment in his gaze, only silent patience. Feeling safe, Eleanor continued, "But there's more. Something else that has made me carry this burden." She hesitated, biting her lip. "What is it?" he asked quietly, almost as if not wanting to push. She took a deep breath before revealing the truth. "I'm infertile. I found out while my husband was still alive. Our dream was always to have children, but it never happened. For me, it was as if all my dreams died with him. And for the village, well, to them, I am nothing but a useless woman." Her last words came out almost as a whisper, heavy with pain. Nathaniel remained silent for a few seconds, taking it in. Then, in an unexpected gesture, he reached out and placed his hand over hers. The touch was firm, yet gentle. "You are not alone, Eleanor," he said with seriousness. "Life has also taken from me what I loved most. My wife died when Amelia was still small. Since then, I've carried the weight of raising my daughter alone. There were days I thought I couldn't do it, nights I questioned if I was enough, but I kept going, and despite all the pain, Amelia is my strength." Eleanor lifted her eyes to him. There was no pity in Nathaniel's gaze, only understanding. Two broken souls recognizing each other's scars. "So, we both know what it is to lose," she murmured. "Yes," he replied, "but we also know what it is to keep going." A deep silence enveloped them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. On the contrary, it was the silence of those who understood each other without needing words. Amelia ran back to them, carrying wildflowers she had picked along the way. She placed an improvised crown on Eleanor's head and laughed. "Now you look like part of our family." Eleanor's heart tightened. Part of the family. That was exactly how she was beginning to feel, even though she was still afraid to believe it. As the sun slowly descended, bathing the field in gold, Nathaniel looked at her once more. That picnic had not been just a simple outing. It had been a meeting of wounded souls, allowing themselves for the first time to believe they could start over. That moment marked something new between them. After the picnic, the days flowed with unexpected ease. It seemed nothing could disturb this newfound harmony. But life, cruel and unpredictable, always finds a way to test even the most fragile moments of peace. One heavy afternoon, the sky darkened early, a sign of approaching rain. Nathaniel noticed that Amelia was unwell. She complained of body aches, her face burning, her voice weak. Night fell over the farm like a heavy cloak. The sky, which had been overcast since morning, now broke into thunder and lightning, shaking the windows of Nathaniel's simple house. The rain fell hard, relentless, hammering the roof. Inside, Nathaniel tried to remain calm, but something within him was crumbling. Amelia, his little girl, had been complaining since the early afternoon. First, a strange warmth in her skin, then weakness in her body. Nathaniel worried let her rest, thinking it might be just fatigue. But by nightfall, the fever had risen so high it seared the fragile body of the girl. "Daddy," "I'm so hot," Amelia murmured, her eyes heavy, her voice trembling. Nathaniel knelt beside her bed, touching her forehead. His heart nearly stopped. Her skin burned like embers. "It'll pass, my little one. It'll pass," he said, trying to sound firm, though his voice wavered. With each passing minute, the fever only increased. The girl's breathing grew shallow, her face flushed. The thunder outside seemed to echo the storm rising within Nathaniel. He didn't know what to do. He had never known. Since his wife's death, he had carried alone the responsibility of being both father and mother. And now, seeing Amelia burning with fever, he felt helpless, desperate. He stood abruptly. Only one person could help him. Only someone with hands full of tenderness could soothe her like a mother, Eleanor. Nathaniel didn't hesitate. He put on a coat, scooped Amelia into his arms, wrapped in a blanket, and ran to the stable. The wind lashed his face, rain already soaking his clothes. He placed his daughter on the horse beside him, holding her tightly against his chest. "Hold on, my daughter, please," he whispered, tears mingling with the storm's rain. "Daddy's going to take care of you. I won't let anything happen." The ride to the village felt endless. The horse stumbled in the mud, lightning lit the path in fleeting flashes, and Nathaniel's heart pounded painfully. Amelia, exhausted, only whimpered softly. Each sound tore at him. When he finally reached Eleanor's small, simple house, Nathaniel dismounted almost in a leap. Hurriedly, he ran to the door and knocked forcefully, desperate. "Eleanor!" His voice lost amid the roar of the rain. "Eleanor, please help me!" The door swung open suddenly, revealing the widow, hair loose, face astonished. Seeing the girl in his arms, pale and burning, Eleanor brought her hand to her mouth. "Ah, my God, Nathaniel, what happened? It's Amelia. The fever won't go down. I don't know what to do." His voice broke, revealing the desperation he had tried to hide. Without hesitation, Eleanor made space and instructed, "Lay her on the bed, quickly." Nathaniel obeyed, laying Amelia on the simple mattress. The girl curled up, shivering though burning with heat. Eleanor knelt beside her, taking a clean cloth and dipping it into a basin of cold water. Carefully, she began to apply it to the child's forehead, murmuring gentle words. "Shh! Everything will be fine, my angel. Mommy is here." She realized the slip and quickly corrected herself, her voice trembling. I am here." Nathaniel stood frozen for a moment, watching. His heart ached, seeing her care for his daughter with such diligence, as if she were truly a mother. Eleanor dampened Amelia's wrists, adjusted the blanket, stroked her sweat-dampened hair. The girl slowly opened her eyes and whispered, her voice weak, "Daddy, who's here?" Nathaniel held his daughter's hand. "It's Eleanor, dear. She's going to help you." Even feverish, Amelia managed a small smile as she recognized her presence. "Eleanor, don't leave me." Tears filled the widow's eyes. "I won't leave, Amelia. I promise." The following hours were full of anguish. Eleanor brewed herbal teas she knew, dampened cloths to cool the girl's body, and didn't leave her side. Nathaniel, beside her, held his daughter's hand tightly, but also watched every movement of Eleanor. There was a quiet strength in her that left him in awe. The storm outside showed no sign of letting up. Lightning illuminated the house at intervals, but inside there was a greater battle, the fight for little Amelia's life. At one point the girl began shivering more violently, murmuring incoherent words. Nathaniel felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. "Eleanor, she's getting worse." "Calm down," she replied, though her heart was racing as well. "The fever hasn't broken yet, but we won't give up. Hold her steady." She applied more compresses, gently blew on the girl's forehead, and began to softly sing a simple song, almost like a prayer. The sweet voice filled the room, bringing an unexpected relief. Nathaniel, moved, closed his eyes for a moment, letting the melody cradle the hope within him. Time seemed to stand still, but little by little Amelia's body began to relax. Sweat ran down her face, and her breathing became lighter. Nathaniel noticed and whispered almost in disbelief, It's working." Eleanor nodded, exhausted but with a faint smile. "She'll get through this. She just needs care and love." When Amelia finally fell asleep, the fever subsiding, Nathaniel couldn't hold back the tears. He sat beside the bed and buried his face in his hands. "I thought I was going to lose my daughter," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Eleanor placed her hand on his shoulder, firm and warm. "You will never be alone in this fight, Nathaniel." He lifted his tear-filled eyes to hers. In their gaze was something new, something beyond gratitude. Two wounded souls had found each other amidst the storm. That rainy night, between the sound of thunder and the girl's calm breathing, Nathaniel realized that Eleanor was not only the woman who had saved his life, but perhaps also the salvation of his heart and Amelia's. The sun returned after the storm, and the farm seemed to breathe in relief. The fresh air carried the scent of wet earth, and birds sang as if celebrating new life. Amelia, who had spent days fighting fever, ran through the yard again, cheeks rosy, laughter spreading hope across the property. Nathaniel watched the scene from a distance, arms crossed, but with misty eyes. He still remembered that rainy night when, desperate, he had run to Eleanor's door, begging for help. He remembered the way she had held his daughter in her arms, how her calm voice had lulled her to sleep, how the gentle touch of her hands seemed to chase away the pain. That had not been just care, it had been love. And now, watching his daughter run freely again, Nathaniel realized that Eleanor had not only saved his life on the cliff, but also Amelia's. And somehow, she had saved his heart too. That golden afternoon, as the sky was painted in orange hues, he made a decision. It was time to take the next step. The next day, Nathaniel appeared at Eleanor's simple house. He looked more polished than usual, a clean shirt, polished boots, hair combed back. His expression was firm, but there was nervousness in his eyes. "Eleanor," he called when she appeared at the door, surprised to see him. "I'd like you to come to the farm this afternoon. I've prepared something for you, and for Amelia too." She hesitated for a moment, her heart racing. She had never received such a direct invitation from him, but the contained smile on his face and the serious way he spoke gave her courage. "All right," she replied, a mixture of anticipation and apprehension growing inside her. When Eleanor arrived at the farm, she was greeted by Amelia, who ran to hug her enthusiastically. The girl held her hand and pulled her inside, eager. "Daddy prepared everything," she said, laughing. "He even made apple pie." Eleanor's heart almost stopped. Nathaniel cooking. That alone was a gesture of devotion. In the dining room, the table was set simply, yet with care. Fresh flowers decorated the center, plates were neatly arranged, and a warm meal released a welcoming aroma. Nathaniel was waiting, slightly awkward, but with a different sparkle in his eyes. "I hope you like it," he said, serving the food. "I'm not a great cook, but I did my best." During the meal, Amelia chattered non-stop, telling stories and drawing laughs from Eleanor. Nathaniel barely touched his food. He simply watched how Eleanor laughed, how her eyes lit up when the girl said something funny, how she seemed to belong there effortlessly. And silently, he knew he didn't want to live without this woman anymore. When they finished eating, Amelia went to play in the yard, leaving them alone. The atmosphere changed. Nathaniel stood, approached slowly, and extended his hand to Eleanor, asking her to rise as well. She did, slightly confused, her heart pounding. "Eleanor," he began, his voice deep and emotional, "when you came into our lives, I didn't know what to think. I was used to facing everything alone, carrying my pain in silence, but you brought peace, you brought hope, you brought love to my daughter." Tears filled her eyes. "Nathaniel, he interrupted, raising his hand slightly. "I know your past. I know the pain you carry. But I don't care what they say in the village. I don't care if they say you're sterile or cursed. To me, you are already everything I need. To Amelia, you are already a mother." And then, with his heart in his hands, he knelt before her. "Eleanor, will you marry me?" The air seemed to vanish from her chest. She had never imagined that a man like Nathaniel, strong, respected, would choose the very woman everyone judged. Tears streamed down her face, but a smile spread at the same time. "Yes, Nathaniel," she replied, her voice trembling. "Yes, I do." He rose, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her with intensity, as if sealing not just a love, but a promise of life. The following months were transformative. On the farm, life blossomed. Eleanor now walked through the hallways not as a visitor, but as the mistress of the house. Amelia called her mother without hesitation, clinging to her in tight hugs that filled Eleanor's heart with joy. Nathaniel, in turn, seemed lighter. The weight he had carried for years began to lift. Beside Eleanor, he discovered he didn't have to be only the strong, unshakable farmer. He could be a man, a companion, a father, and he could be happy. They built a family not by blood, but by love. A love born from the improbable, from fear, loss, and loneliness. A love nurtured by tears and storms, yet it flourished across the fields. One night, while watching Amelia sleep, Eleanor held Nathaniel's hand and whispered, "I thought my story ended when I lost my husband. I thought there was no place left for me in the world, but now I know life was just preparing me to find you." He hugged her from behind, resting his face against her hair. "And I know that without you, we would never be complete. Life doesn't always give us what we dream of. Often it takes us along painful paths, full of losses and judgment. But sometimes, in the midst of suffering, encounters emerge that can heal deep wounds." Eleanor and Nathaniel learned that family is not just blood. It is care. It is devotion. It is a love that defies time and opposing voices, because in the end, what truly matters is not what they say about us, but what we build with courage, despite everything. And so, together, they found a new beginning.